Join women passionate about agriculture and food at the upcoming Advancing Women in Agriculture Conference being held on March 16th through 18th, 2025 at the Hyatt Regency in Calgary, Alberta. Re-energize and re-engage while listening to leaders in the food and agriculture industry tell their stories. Network and make connections while learning tips that will help you meet your goals. For more information and to register, head to the link in today's show notes. Hi, I'm Caitlin Dubin, and this is the Rural Woman Podcast. I'm a first-generation farmer who married into agriculture. Born and raised in a city, I was so unfamiliar with where my food came from, but I was determined to figure it out. Through my journey into agriculture, I saw women who were strong but humble, often taking a back seat. To me, these women were leaders who deserved a seat at the table. I created the Rural Woman Podcast to share the voices of women in an industry whose stories often went untold. The rural entrepreneurs who live and breathe their work, full of grit and pride. We come here to share our stories, to be in community with each other, to be challenged and inspired, but most importantly, to be celebrated and to be heard. We may not all live, farm, ranch, or homestead the same, but we are all connected. We are rural women, and our stories are worthy of being told. Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of the Rural Woman Podcast. Today, you'll hear my mini interviews from the Advancing Women in Agriculture Conference East 2024. I am so excited to share this special episode with you all. Back in November 2024, while attending the Advancing Women in Agriculture Conference East in Niagara Falls, Ontario, I had the privilege of connecting with some truly inspiring and incredible women. I was fortunate enough to sit down with a few of the attendees of the conference to conduct these mini interviews. I hope you enjoy listening to these as much as I enjoyed recording them, and you get to hear a part of their incredible story. Without further ado, my friends, let's get to this week's episode with the special mini interviews from the Advancing Women in Agriculture East Conference. So tell us who you are and where you're from and what your connection to agriculture is.
So my name is Abigail Moir. I grew up in Pictou County, Nova Scotia. I didn't grow up directly in agriculture. However, I have always had a passion for where our food comes from, how it is produced, and the nutrition side of it.
Right.
In high school, I was thinking of a nutrition career for humans, but then I changed my course completely and went into agriculture business because I thought it would be the closest way to understanding how our food is produced outside of like humans' consumption. So with that, I've been able to network, meet people in the agriculture industry that I didn't know before, and having a better understanding of how our food is produced, especially on a local maritime level.
Right. The Maritimes in itself is different from where I'm from in Canada and the Prairie provinces and how we're growing and producing food. What year of schooling are you in now?
I'm in my fourth year.
In your fourth year. So what are you going to do when you grow up? What do you want to do when you're done school?
I have no idea. I have applied for my education degree. I've always been a lifelong learner and wanting to ensure people do know how to learn and learning about new things. So I would love to take agriculture further into the curriculum and into the classroom and teach like agricultural sciences. If that path doesn't work out, I'd love to look into consulting with businesses and strategic planning. And I really have no idea.
That's okay. I don't know if you need to know. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So you have time. As a person, you said you didn't really grow up in the industry, and the way that you came into it, might not be as typical as maybe some of your classmates. What have been some of the biggest surprises to you in the agriculture industry?
Just how people don't understand it, I guess. Like, even some of my classmates have no idea about agriculture, and they came in taking an agriculture degree, but since it's close to home, it was easy to take. And just I don't know, the way people are surprised with how things actually get done. And people don't know how to milk a cow, or some don't know where your potato comes from. But like I had someone ask me if a potato grew on a bush. I was like, no, a potato grows on the ground.
Right.
But it's just the unawareness, I guess.
Yeah.
But I've also loved being able to learn. The Maritimes is very nice in the way that they want people to know. Mm-hmm. So being able to talk to local producers and local advocates has been a great way to learn more and further my knowledge. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I always think that there's something special about the relationship that you can build with people who don't know about the industry and the way that we approach it as people who are educated in the industry, and sharing those stories in the way that we learned and just sharing with them that, potatoes don't grow on a bush. They grow in the ground. And, this is how it's done. And in PEI, like, we have the red soil and we have all of those things, right? Like, there's different unique things that if you're not immersed in the industry, you don't know. And what you don't know, you don't know. Mm-hmm. But the way that we approach it in the industry to the people who don't know, I think is super important. Mm-hmm. Is this your first time at Advancing Women?
It is, yes.
How do you like it so far?
I love it. It's been a great opportunity to further network, but also like understand leadership within agriculture, specifically for women. Like it's very hard for women to kind of grow. I feel like it's always kind of been a setback from society, but learning how women can further advance and how they can kind of stand out from the rest of a crowd has been great.
Right, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
Okay, my name is Brenda Aylward, and I am from Port Kerwin, which is a tiny community on the coast, just outside of St. John's, Newfoundland. And my connection to agriculture, I'm a fifth-generation farmer, and we're a mixed commodity farm, sheep and vegetables. We migrated from cattle to sheep about 15, 20 years ago because they're smaller, and when they break the fences down, they're easier to get back inside. So I grew up with my father working away, so my grandmother and my mother were the farmers who did all the work. They shared the sheep, they birthed the animals. So I grew up with that, but I never really considered myself a farmer until I came to this conference last year. And I realized that I was a woman in agriculture and that I was a leader and that I wear many hats on our farm. Yeah.
I want to expand more on that statement. I didn't consider myself a farmer until. Mm-hmm. What do you think was holding you back from using that as your title?
I think it was an unawareness, and it wasn't intentional from other people, but they would come to the farm and they would ask to speak to my father. And I always considered myself to be the farmer's daughter. And so it wasn't until I attended this conference last year, I started to realize. I attended one of the sessions, and we spoke about all the hats a woman is wearing these days. While being a farmer, you're also, taking care of home, kids, you're a caregiver to parents, you do all of the worrying on the farm, you do the finances, the bookkeeping, whatever the case may be, and you're still expected to kind of put on a smile at the end of the day. And so I realized I was doing all of that, and that I also run our livestock operation and our breeding program and our pasture rotation. So those are my decisions. And I thought, well, I'm a farmer, I'm a female, and I'm a leader. And so for the past year, since I attended a conference last year, I've really taken more of a leadership role. And I'm now the face of our farm. And also, if I can say it, spearheading the Women in Agriculture Association that's being started now in Newfoundland.
Right. Tell me more about the association.
So that was a very exciting venture that I was, again, after I attended this conference last year, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, Terri Robbins, and the Federation of Agriculture had it on their radar for some years because there is a seat at the table for women in agriculture. And so they offered support to Terri, Lynn, and I to spearhead a roadshow across Newfoundland and Labrador and to gauge interest, to see if there was an interest in that type of association for women. And we went across, we did 3 in-person and a virtual tour, and just asked women what their achievements are, what their everyday challenges are, and we took the common themes from there, and we now have developed the strat plan, and we're in the process of becoming incorporated. So our mission statement, which has been finalized, and I can't verbatim tell you what it is, but it's basically about the empowerment of women. So it's for women and those who support women in agriculture, not just farmers and producers, but women who work in any aspect of the agricultural industry. So we have researchers, educators, finance people, anyone who has a connection to agriculture.
I hear this story and the fact that 2 years ago, this sounds like it was kind of a different life for you. Mm-hmm. And obviously the leader was in you, and it was just waiting to get out. So what would you say to somebody who is listening that has an opportunity to attend either Advancing Women in Agriculture or any other type of conference like this for themselves?
I think be open to the idea and take the leap. It may not be what you're expecting, because a lot of times I think we think of conferences and we think of, going into a boring setting where we're going to hear the same thing we hear everywhere we go. But it's an eye-opener. It's empowering. It just makes you have a self-awareness that you're so much more than what you think sometimes. And the networking opportunities and the people you meet, and just in a room full of hundreds of people, that there are so many people that have the same situation, maybe in a larger setting or a smaller setting, but they're in the same situation that you are in. So you're among friends. Yeah, for sure.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you're connected to agriculture.
I am Charlee Fox. I'm from Manitoba, but I'm studying at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm studying agribusiness. So this is my first year in school, so I've technically only been in school for like 3 months. It's been a wild 3 months, but I grew up on a ranch in Eddystone. It's like this blink and you miss it kind of community, and I've always just loved the intertwined community like itself. Like, we don't spend Christmas with our family, we spend Christmas with our neighbors. Like, I've always loved how welcoming our community is, and just I've always loved the cattle. I love my beef cows.
Right?
Yeah.
That's so good. So why did you decide that you were going to go to post-secondary for agriculture? Was there anything else that you had ideas that you wanted to do, or you knew that you wanted to be a part of the agriculture community?
I always knew I wanted to be a part of the agriculture community, but my reasoning for going for post-secondary is like, for me, someday my goal is to be an advocate for underrepresented groups in ag. So like, I have 2 younger brothers that they are taking the route of they're going to be little ranchers, and it's so fun to watch them. I love watching my younger brothers. They're amazing. They shock me every day. Like, just the things that they do. They're only 15 and 17, and they are little producers, right? Yeah. And I see the challenges that they face, and that's the type of thing that someday I want to make it simpler for the next kid that comes along, the next kid that's just like them. And like, our Indigenous community, for me, like, I just see them and I appreciate all the work that they do, but I fear a little bit that they're not viewed as producers and they're viewed more as hired hands in our community. And I think that just needs to come a long way, because they are people and they are capable just as much as the rest of us. And that's why I thought that a degree would really help me make my place.
Yeah, I love that. And when we're thinking of our Indigenous communities, they are the original stewards of where we live, right?
Exactly.
Where do you think the passion for the underrepresented part came from?
My mom is an only parent, so she has ran her little ranch in Eddystone all alone for like 10 years now. And so just watching how strong she is and how capable she is, and seeing a little bit like how overlooked she is as a woman, like, it's unbelievable. And I've done a lot of research into this and just watching all the different like sectors of underrepresented people. And I just think like it's something that I think I can make a big difference in. It really spikes from my mom and my family and my brothers.
Yeah, I love that. So we've only been at Advancing Women in Agriculture for about an hour and 45 minutes so far, but you've been to AWC West, so
yes.
you kind of know the lay of the land.
Yeah.
Why do you come? Why do you keep coming back to this conference?
My mom used to speak at the conference. She spoke in 2019, and that was the first time I ever watched her present. Yeah. And she used to do it like for years. She'd do like tours across Ontario. And so for me, I wanted to come back and I wanted to be able to network. That was one big thing for me. But I wanted to have this experience for myself and not just because I'm Angie's daughter, right?
Right. I love that. And it's like the next generation of strong women coming and representing at this conference. And like you said, the connections that you make are absolutely amazing. And just hearing other people's stories, right? You get to feel what I get to feel on a daily basis talking into a microphone. So, Charlee, what's the most rewarding part about being a woman in agriculture for you?
For me, it's a little bit that it's about perception a little bit for me. I love that I see things from a totally different point of view than like men do in agriculture because it's predominantly male, obviously, but I see a whole different world than what my younger brothers get to see, right? Like I have a lot of doors open in different realms, like that ag is such a big community beyond just the farm, right? Like it's so many little places that there's a million little things that make the community what it is. And I love how inclusive we really are. We overlook the fact often that agriculture is more than just the farm and the ranch. And I love being a part of that side as well.
Right. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
My name is Jade Lawrence. I'm from Portabass, Newfoundland, and my connection to agriculture is, originally I started in livestock feeds, which led to me going to college for an agricultural program, which is new in Newfoundland, and now I work on a fruit and veggie farm in Newfoundland as well.
Very cool. What drove you to be in agriculture? Why was this a career for you?
I originally worked with small companion pets, and as an addition to our business, we had started selling Purina livestock feeds because we had horses, and I was kind of forced to take those books home and learn how to not end off someone's livestock with feed, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like I found it really interesting and all the benefits. So you can change how much milk a cow's producing by just feed, and things like that really intrigued me. So I kind of went looking for how can I create a career in this, and it just so happened that Newfoundland had just put in their first agriculture program 2 years before in the community I was living in. I didn't even know. So I applied and I went back to school for a couple of years, and once I started, I kind of learned how broad agriculture really is, and that's how I ended up kind of fruit and veggie farming. Even though I went in with intentions of livestock and nutrition, I found a lot of other areas that I really was intrigued by that I had no idea about prior to.
Right. So tell me about the fruit and veggie business.
So it's down and dirty. I kind of like it, like it's not laid back. Like there is a lot of pressure. It's a lot of really labor intensive, but it's not an immediate emergency like it is with livestock. So you can kind of, like, pardon the pun, but like stop and smell the roses and kind of take it all in. And it's interesting, especially in Newfoundland. Like we have a lot of difficulties that you don't see in the rest of Canada. Like our topography is different. We can't use a lot of mechanical harvesters because you can't drive them there, or you can't get them to where you need to be. Our soil is not great. So like we were always preparing for years in advance with an endless amount of limestone or the acidity difficulties. It's tough, but it's interesting and it's fun. And I enjoy it, yeah.
So what crops are you producing off the farm?
So we do almost 40 different types of fruits and veggies. Mainly the big thing at the beginning of the season is our strawberry U-pick. And then throughout the season, we've got like our traditional root vegetables, blueberry U-picks. And then as we get further into fall, we get into our pumpkin festival. So we're probably one of the largest, I would say, like U-pick wise on the island. There's not a lot in general, but for West Coast for sure, we're kind of the hot spot for pumpkins this time of year.
Very cool. Is this your first time at the Advancing Women's Conference?
It is, yeah. It's my first time being here.
Yeah. How do you like it so far?
I really like how there's so many different people from different parts of the industry. Mm-hmm. And the networking is like, this one might be in dairy and this one might be in fruit and veg, but there's still so much connection. And I like how broad it is basically here.
Right. What do you think, you yourself, in your experience, what has been the biggest challenge for you as a woman in this industry?
I would say, and it probably kind of boils down a little bit to living in rural Newfoundland, is you can't do it because you're female kind of thing. Like, and even like just simple stuff, starting with feed, like you can't lift that, let me carry that for you. Like, I just unloaded 3 tons in that trailer. I can carry you the bag of feed.
Right. And
just little stuff like that. Or like, even when I worked on the horse farm, like people will come in and be like, like, who's in charge here? It's me, this little 5-foot blonde. But Newfoundland's so old fashioned, and it's a big difficulty of you can't because you're a woman kind of thing.
Right.
So I find that to be quite difficult. But conferences like here, and we just started a Women in Agriculture in Newfoundland, I think that could probably break the barrier of that.
Right. Well, and one of my biggest inspirations when I leave this conference, I started coming to this conference as an attendee and have since become the biggest fangirl and come back all the time. The confidence that women walk out with to bring into this industry is like nothing else. And I'm always like, look out, everyone, we're coming.
Absolutely. We're a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even just after a couple of like the speakers this morning in the workshops, like you walk out even 20 minutes later so much more confident in this is how I can go about succeeding while still facing these difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you think is the most rewarding part about being a woman in agriculture?
The fact that we can, and we can probably do it in better detail.
And we look way better doing it.
Yeah. 100%.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you're connected to agriculture.
My name is Josée Lemoine, and I'm from Manitoba. Specifically, I live right now in St. Adolphe. We have 12 acres, 2 horses, a cat, and a dog, and 4 kids. I have been working in agriculture for about 5 years now. I've started working as a farm management consultant, which was an extension of my consulting career. So I'd been doing consulting across multiple industries and decided to focus in agriculture. And so did that. This summer, I made a shift, and I'm now working in business development with Farm Lending Canada. So we are alternative lenders in the ag space.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I always find it interesting when folks primarily didn't grow up in agriculture or were not immersed in the agriculture lifestyle end up here. And I'm always curious to ask, what misconceptions did you have about farmers or farming that in the last number of years that really have changed for you?
Well, I'm going to say I don't have too many misconceptions because my extended family are farmers.
Okay.
So my aunts, uncles have farmed for many years. Just so happens that my parents chose not to farm. Right. My husband also grew up on a farm. So I think I have a pretty good handle on what's going on.
Right. And you have important conversations with farmers. You have conversations about bottom lines. You have conversations about the dollars and cents that go into farming. What do you think the biggest challenges farmers have been seeing in the last number of years has been?
Oh, gosh, and this is not an exhaustive list. Right. And so certainly, we hear that they're coming off. And I should also state that my experience is also Western Canadian prairie-based farming. Right. So I'm not speaking to Ontario, BC farming, which is a little bit different. When we look at that, they've had a good run. And the last couple of years have been a little rougher. Margins are getting squeezed. And so it's how are they going to plan forward for that? And so, yeah, it's really about, best case, worst case forecasting. Right. and then sticking to some of the core ideas that they have, and balancing that.
Absolutely. So. Well, and every farmer's scenario is different from one another. It doesn't matter if you are next door neighbors or a province is over. There are similarities, obviously, in our industry, but every operation is different. What are some success stories that you can share and that you are proud to share?
So farm lending is still too new. It's been 2 months.
Yes.
So I'll go back into the consulting years that I've done. And, I really admire the farms that I've had the privilege of working either directly with or through the colleagues that I had at Backswath Management. And so many successes. And I'm talking that the transition has gone well, and that the next generation, whether it's the second generation or in some cases third and fourth, and how well that they've done to really plan and look future forward and, make sure that this business can be multi-generational. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and it's not easy. And it does take time. And so it is, and I'll use the word discipline that they have. And that's, I think, the key to the success is it doesn't happen overnight. And so it is discipline that you need to have a successful transition. And unfortunately, transition, you can pause, but then you have to keep looking at it because things keep happening.
Right.
So it's not a one and done.
Right.
And so it's that discipline of what are the triggering events. And and we hear so many stories. Only 13% of farmers have, a written down succession plan. And to all of those that don't, do it.
Right. I'm not making eye contact with you right now. That's amazing. Thank you. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection in agriculture is.
So my name's Karla Rahn. I grew up just outside of Woodstock, Ontario, and the small town is named Drumbo. I live in Ottawa right now, but my connection to agriculture is I grew up on a farm, and I did farm myself for about 8 years, and I'm still in ag.
Still in ag. Tell us about the farm you grew up on.
It was a beef cash crop farm. My father one day decided to buy a farm. Generationally, he grew up, he had family in farms, but he was a teacher, and my mom worked off the farm. So, it was a whole new experience for all of us.
So you mentioned that you farmed as well
yes.
for a time. Tell us about that.
So I farmed, I had gone to Guelph, and I had started in wildlife biology, and then my parents were going to sell the farm, and I just kind of was like, oh, there's so much. I felt like there was potential there to do something. So I switched to agronomy and decided to take over the farm. Now, it was small, right? Like it was a 100-acre farm, but we rented another 150. So it was, it's too small to go conventional, so I decided to go organic. But I was also interested in the idea of, nowadays it's called footprint. This was back in the 90s. So back then it was just more, we have an impact on everything that we do, and it's not linear.
Right.
And so for me it was, okay, I've got this small space. How can I make some money from it and do it in a way that I feel good for the future?
Right. Tell us what you're doing now in agriculture, because you're still here. You're still with the farmers.
Yes, I work for myself and I do ag biz and so business planning, transition planning, and mostly it is about business planning. And I like to say my little niche, and I don't know, people kind of look at it strangely, but work with farmers that are in financial difficulty, but there's a way out, right? So yeah, sometimes I would have to tell people there's no way out, but generally there's a way to get over the hump, and it's just a matter of being able to help farmers. You pull the options, and then they can build a plan around that and get out of that situation.
What do you think is one of the biggest hurdles that you see commonly with farmers that are in that situation?
Their head is stuck in the sand. One of the hardest parts is getting them to take action, but taking action for themselves. And without making them feel like they've made bad choices. And, there's no judgment there. It's, you're here, you need to get here, but you can't keep doing the same thing.
Right.
Because you will no longer be here.
Exactly. And I like that, what you said about there's no judgment.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard, especially I feel as though collectively farmers are very proud people in many ways.
Yeah.
And asking for help is really hard. So if somebody's listening right now and they're identifying with those characteristics, what do you have to say to them?
There's no one person that can fix it. And it really has to come from you, first of all. But a lot of the times when I'm working with farmers, I will need to recommend, have you ever thought of working with a therapist? Have you ever thought of working with a coach? Have you ever thought of working with, or the lawyer can do this and that, right? So it is about the advisor you're working with. Are they thinking while you're talking sort of, okay, this is outside my scope? Are they self-aware enough to know that it's outside their scope and they're getting the right person in at the right time to help that person develop and grow as a business owner and a farmer? So,
and I think, in specifically family farming, there is so many complex relationships, and what you said, like there's no one person that's going to fix this. It's a team effort, and to accept that, to be vulnerable enough to know that, I need some help, and knowing that everybody needs help. We are not immune because we're farmers.
No. Yeah, I think that's so important, but it's such a hard. One of my favorite things to say is people don't know what they don't know. And it's really about acknowledging that.
Right.
And I find when people are they're stuck in a situation, and I just ask a lot of questions, and have them sort of start talking and then build from there.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to go in there and tell them what to do, but I'm going to help them get there.
Absolutely. What's the name of your business?
Ag Risk Managers Limited.
Perfect. If people want to know more about this, where can they find more information online?
agriskmanagers.com. About it. I don't have a huge presence.
That's okay. You have a website though.
Yes, we
perfect.
have a website.
We're going to link that in the show notes and people can see that.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, I'm Caitlin. Thanks for having me.
I'm Caitlin too, and by judging of your name tag, your parents spelled it right, just like mine. So,
Perfect.
Caitlin, sister friend, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
So I'm from southwestern Ontario, and I'm a dairy farmer. I grew up on a dairy farm, and now I'm farming with my husband and still involved with my family. So my husband has now started farming with my family.
Very cool. Was your husband also a farmer, or?
He was from a smaller beef and cash crop farm growing up, and he's actually a plumber by trade.
Nice. Well, those are handy to have around.
Oh, yes.
Right?
He's good at fixing the things I break.
Perfect. That's what we need. That's what we need. So tell me more about your dairy operation.
So we used to milk about 220 cows across the road. And then when I came home to farm and my sister did, my family actually split the herd in half and split the quota, and we built a new facility across the road. So my husband and I run one facility, and my sister and her husband run the other. And then my dad helps out with the field work. We kind of do that all together. We work closely in relation, but two separate businesses.
Very cool. So you grew up on this family farm.
Yes.
Did you ever think about leaving the family farm?
No, I went through a phase when I was in university that I thought I wanted to be a vet. And then I realized I didn't like school that much. Like I just, there was a lot of other things I could do in the agricultural field that I would enjoy just as much with a lot less schooling.
Very cool. Yes. And I'm with you on the schooling thing. It's like, I can love cows, but in a different way on my own operation and doing it differently.
And I think if I was like being raised now versus when I was in high school, I wouldn't have even thought vet in the first place. Like when I was in high school, I told my guidance counselor I wanted to go, vet, agriculture, and it's like farming. And she's like, you can do so much more with your life. Like it wasn't something that like women didn't farm when I started.
Right. So growing up on the operation and even mentioning like women don't farm, was that the lived experience? Were there less women in your community that would call themselves a farmer?
Yes. I had friends who were involved with cattle and 4-H and everything and would do chores on their farms, but it was never a thought to farm for a future. Right. Like none of my friends who grew up on farms ever thought that their career would be farming. Like maybe they would marry a farmer, but they never thought that would be their career.
Right. And for them to have their own operation from the family farm and that be a part of anything.
Exactly.
Very cool. Have you been to an Advancing Women's Conference before?
Yes. I used to work for Shergain in nutrition.
Okay.
And so I went when I worked at Shergain.
Very cool. What do you think so far? Why do you keep coming back? That's a better question. Why do you keep coming back?
Honestly, it's just a really empowering conference. You get really good vibes after it, and you leave feeling like you could conquer the world.
Absolutely. What are some things that you've learned from conferences, this one and previous ones, that you've been able to take and implement on your operation?
Honestly, I think like a lot of it is about mindset and the mindset you go into places with. Like I remember the last time I was here, there was someone that talked about like happiness and how your mindset like causes your body to react. So I remember we had your arms out and they talked about like saying how your body feels what's right and what's not. So you would put your arm out and someone would push down as hard as they can and you'd say like, my name is Katelyn. And you had your full strength in your arm. They could not move your arm and push it down. And then you'd say something ridiculous like, my name's Ashley or something. And the strength in your arm is gone. Like it's your mindset and the truth and like affects your strength and your body.
Right.
And it just stuck with me and how like I find that in the future your mindset really affects how you can like achieve things.
Absolutely. Totally agree. What is the most rewarding part about being a woman in agriculture for you?
Honestly, I have a daughter, and being a woman in agriculture, it's just nice that like you can do it too. I think being a mom, you definitely need a little more support, especially if you're raising children, but like there's nothing I'm not able to do. I am able to do all the tasks. I have the capability, and I feel like growing up, you didn't always believe that, and it's nice to know that like you are just as capable as them.
Right, and teaching the future generation of women in agriculture that they can do it too. I love that. Thanks, Katelyn.
Thank you.
Join women passionate about agriculture and food at the upcoming Advancing Women in Agriculture Conference being held on March 16th through 18th at the Hyatt Regency in Calgary, Alberta. The Advancing Women in Agriculture Conference is created for every woman who is passionate about agriculture and food, whether you are a university student studying agriculture, a producer, entrepreneur, representative of a growers association, or corporate agribusiness. AWC has a proven track record of bringing women in agriculture and food together from across Canada and parts of the U.S. AWC is proud of the quality of speakers that are brought to the podium, including business experts, motivational and inspirational leaders, industry representatives, and farmers just like you. I'll be there hosting mini interviews at the AWC 2025 West Conference, so join us in sharing your story as well as learning from other amazing women in agriculture. For more information and to register, head to advancingwomenconference.ca or the link in today's show notes.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
Yes, so my name is Kendra Gillette. I am currently a master's student at the University of Guelph. However, I'm originally from Alberta. So I did my bachelor's degree back home, and then I wanted to pursue my master's in animal well-being and behavior, or animal welfare. And the best place to do that is the University of Guelph. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm from. And how I got connected with agriculture is like volunteering in undergrad. There wasn't a lot of opportunities outside of agriculture. Like at the U of A, if you're doing animal research, it's with chickens or pigs or cows. So those are my options, even though that wasn't necessarily what I was interested in. They won me over. And so I wanted to do a master's looking at how can we improve best management practices that will in turn make producers' lives easier and then, improve animal welfare. So
Where in Alberta are you originally from?
I'm originally from Edmonton. So city girl, no experience on farms prior to starting my undergrad. And then I got a little taste of farm life. And then COVID happened. So no more volunteering.
And what are you hoping to do when you are done with your studies?
Yeah, so I will be defending my master's in 4 weeks. So once I've done that, then publish my papers, and I would love to go work in industry. I did my research with dairy cows, so I would love to stay in the dairy industry if there's a position available. That being said, my passion is improving animal welfare, so that doesn't have to be dairy cows. But yeah, I would like to go into the livestock industry and work towards improving best management practices through policy and development.
I love asking this question specifically for people who didn't really grow up in agriculture or around it and found it through other sources. What were some of your first memories surrounding food and where your food came from?
I've always eaten meat, and I never really thought about it until undergrad, and we're like in lab, and they're like, okay, like for a lab today we're gonna go tour the swine unit, and like you walk in and then you're like, okay, like first of all, these animals are enormous. Like this sow weighs like 8 times what I weigh. Like this is so crazy. So it kind of puts everything in perspective. And then research barns are quite a bit different than like a commercial barn. And the first time I stepped into a commercial barn, I was taken aback because I was like, wow, like these people, like these chickens, like are going to be on our shelves, which is kind of crazy to think. But that never deterred me from consuming animal products because I saw how much producers care. Like they don't just care about profit. They genuinely care about the well-being of their animals. So I think if anything, it made me want to support the industry more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What has been some of your biggest takeaways from Advancing Women Conference?
Biggest takeaways are that you don't have to look like a woman in ag to be a woman in ag. I think like coming from the city, the way that I present myself is certainly not a girl in cowboy boots, certainly not a girl who owns flannel or bootcut jeans or a belt with a big belt buckle. Like that's just not who I am. But coming from Alberta, and even at the University of Guelph, there is quite a bit of that in the ag sector. And so I think like coming here and seeing like, okay, you don't have to present yourself in that specific way to be a successful woman in agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
You don't have to own flannel.
Yes, you don't, or a big belt.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
Hello, Caitlin. I am Lorraine Van Ewyk, and I am a farmer in southwestern Ontario. We raise sheep. We also have a value-added product, so we have a bakery on farm along with our farm store. And my connection to agriculture is kind of multifaceted. Obviously, being a farmer myself and my hubby. But I also am the co-founder of the National Farmers Mental Health Alliance. So we have the absolute privilege of walking alongside farmers all across Canada and into the U.S. now and help them in their journey towards wellness and what that looks like for them.
Right. What does wellness look like for you?
I think wellness looks like using whatever gifts or talents or passions or the lack of gifts and talents and passions so that people can tell their story in a way or people can experience their own healing and their own passion. Like I'm a really big lead from the side kind of person. I love to come alongside people and speak truth, especially when oftentimes as women in ag, we've heard lies about our capacity or our capability, or that's a really big privilege that I get to do a lot.
Wow. It's a privilege that I get to sit here with you today.
Thanks.
After hearing your amazing talk at Advancing Women in Agriculture, tell me what this experience of being able to connect with these women at this conference means to you.
You know, Caitlin, you and I both get the absolute privilege of speaking all across Canada and sometimes in the U.S. I'm very appreciative of each of those opportunities. But Advancing Women in Ag is by far the best conference because there's an understanding that every woman who comes has value. And the leaders, Iris Mack and those in leadership here, I think their passion is for those women to see that value and to grow that value and to develop a passion and develop vision. There's an old proverb that says, without vision, plans fail. Without vision, people don't realize their potential. And I think one of the things that Advancing Women in Ag offers us is an ability to really create vision, to grow our sense of potential, and to see other women who have gone before us, and for us to glean a little bit of wisdom from them.
Yeah. I love that what you said is the women that came before us, because I myself came to Advancing Women for the first time as a very new, fresh-faced farmer and not really understanding what you said about my inherent value of my operation and really of what my place in agriculture was going to be. And when I left, I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like quite yet. But I really look back now and know that hearing the women who came before me and who were brave enough and to stand on the stage and be vulnerable with me really inspired me to follow in those footsteps and create my own path. Yeah. And it's not like any other conference. So, yeah.
It's electrifying. It is this, like, you can come alongside others. You can learn from others. I've never experienced any woman that have been like, oh, you'll get your turn, or there's no competition. There's none of those pieces. It's just like, what can we do to support one another? Yeah. And I think sometimes as women in ag, we're quite isolated sometimes. And so this is a perfect opportunity for us to engage in the fact that there's others with us.
What's the most rewarding part about being a woman in agriculture for you?
Well, for me, it is giving a voice to those that don't normally have a voice. And so I think the most rewarding thing is to walk with people in deep trenches, because they're deep and they are hard, but then to see them sometimes climb out of pits and then thrive. And that's our mojo at the National Farmers Mental Health Alliance, is helping you thrive. And I'm telling you, I have seen women who would have never thought they would stand on stage. I have seen women who have never thought that they would have a healthy relationship, have healthy, thriving relationships. I've seen women who have experienced the depths of depression and come to a place where they experience joy. So that would by far be my place where I love to sit in those places, of course.
Right. And you do it very well. Thanks, Bren.
Thank you.
All right. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
My name is Lisa Cadeau, and I work for Turkey Farmers of Canada. And I work specifically on consumer marketing and brand partnerships. That's my role with them, and that's my connection to agriculture. It's my first role working in agriculture.
Very cool. How long have you been in your role for?
A couple of years, fairly new still. I've worked for a couple of nonprofit organizations, also in a marketing communications role,
right.
One of which was working for a food rescue organization. So there was some learnings there and some connections to agricultural farms, food, supply chain management, retail, and things like that. So
very cool. So you have a very important job of connecting consumers with the delicious turkey that is produced. So tell us what kind of your everyday role looks like.
Well, it's a big job because, as you know, there's other proteins in the market, but we think turkey's the best.
Mm-hmm.
And we focus on making turkey a choice for consumers that they feel they can make for the everyday, not just on special occasions, but for different occasions in their life. So for summer grilling maybe would be a great option for turkey, and other occasions that, maybe are for new consumers to the country, new, consumers that are new to Canada, multicultural audiences that want to find protein they can substitute for traditional recipes and make it their own in Canada.
Very cool. Is this your first time at Advancing Women's Conference, or have you been here before?
First time at the Advancing Women's Conference, and
I love newbies.
Yes.
What are your thoughts so far?
It's been really inspiring and a great way to connect with other women who work in agriculture. So far, I've been really enjoying the connections I've made and the people I've met. The speakers have been very knowledgeable and inspiring. So far, it's been fantastic.
That's amazing. I always look back at when my first time at Advancing Women was, and I'm a grain producer from Southern Alberta, first and foremost, before I ever spoke into a microphone. And I always say it was really pivotal for me for what I do now in making those connections and networking. And myself, I didn't grow up in agriculture. I came through marriage, learned to love farming along the way. How has it been for you? Obviously, you worked in a food capacity beforehand, but being able to work with farmers more directly now and marketing their products, how has it been for you in being welcomed into this industry? Has it been an easy transition, or were there struggles along the way?
The industry is very open and welcoming, and I think it's been a learning experience. It's been quite an education because you get to learn so much more being close to not only organizations that represent farmers, but the farmers themselves, boards, other types of regulatory groups that work together to support our supply management and, retail, all the arms that work together to take the food from the farm to your table. Yeah. And there's a lot that happens in between that a lot of consumers don't know about. And I think it's really important to understand where your food comes from and to know that we have a really strong supply chain and supply chain management in Canada. And that is really important because it's a privilege and not every country has that. That's why we have boards and we have regulatory bodies that oversee those things to make sure our food is safe and that it's abundant and, there's checks and balances and things like that and not an oversupply or an undersupply. So those are all things that I learned when I came into the industry that hadn't really been on my radar and didn't know, what I know now. And I take the opportunity every chance I get to talk to people about what I've learned and still am learning in this process and in this position.
Yeah, so I love that. If you get a chance while you're here, you have to ask Iris Meck about her turkey story because she told us her turkey stories this morning.
Okay.
So you'll have to go
Iris,
ask her.
I will find her and ask about the turkey story. Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing with me.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you are connected to agriculture.
Yeah, my name is Lydia Conrad. I'm from Mount Forest, Ontario, and I'm connected to agriculture through, I guess, where I'm from. Some of my family also has farms, and I'm also getting an education in agriculture. So I did my undergrad in animal biology, my master's in animal behavior and welfare, working with pigs, and now my PhD in, again, animal behavior and welfare, looking at heat stress in dairy cattle. So I work with commercial producers on farm every day. Yeah.
That is very connected to agriculture. So you had mentioned, farm adjacent growing up, but did you have a connection with farms, with hogs, with dairy cattle?
I think I lived on a hog farm until I was about 8 months old. So not really. Yeah. But my mom's best friend had a dairy farm, and I would often go originally to look at the barn cats. And then one day it just kind of clicked. I'm like, wow, the kittens are cool, but look at these cows.
Right.
Like, this is really neat.
I love that you said that. I didn't grow up in agriculture, and my family adjacent, not super connected. And all of my friends that have kids or my nephews that come to the farm, there's cows out there, there's goats out there, and all they want to see is a damn farm cat.
Yeah. The farm cats and the farm dogs are like the true MVPs.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's because as a city kid, like, you can connect with those animals more than like maybe a scary cow because they're kind of big. But
yeah,
I love that. So what was it about livestock that really drew you in to make you want to do your schooling with it?
Yeah, so originally I thought I wanted to be a vet, like everyone else at Guelph. And then I started doing research. I was volunteering on a calf nutrition research project. And honestly, like, I hated the research component of that project. I don't like nutrition at all. But I loved working with the animals, and just the idea of trying to do research to make the industry a better place for the animals is what really drew me in. Like, I'm not a vegetarian. I eat meat every day. But I was like, we're using these animals. Let's try and give them the best possible life. And so that's just kind of how I fell into animal welfare. And then trying to bring the new research that can create these policies is really important to me.
Very cool. So is this your first time at the Advancing Women in Agriculture Conference?
Yes, it is. I was selected for student sponsorship, which is really great.
I love that. And I love that program and the ability for you to come here and be in a room with these incredible women. I think I'm biased, but I think it's such a great opportunity for people really of any age, but for students in general to see all of the different opportunities that are out there in the agriculture industry that's not necessarily being a farmer in overalls standing in a field.
Oh yeah, like last night we were talking to some ladies that do like oil for human consumption, and I was just like, my brain doesn't even think of that when I think of agriculture because I'm so farm focused.
Right.
So it was great. And even my sponsor was Turkey Farmers of Canada. Yeah. And I haven't done anything with turkeys, but just getting in contact with them, it's so great to have the connections.
Yeah, for sure. What has been your biggest takeaway from the conference?
I went to my second session. The workshop was about different profiles and personalities, about director, thinker. Yeah, thank you. Director, thinker, these 4 different types of personalities, and just learning what I was based off a personality assessment we did beforehand was really interesting because I'm looking at personality traits being oh, my advisor's this, or the postdoc is this, and I can just picture it, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's me too. And I hadn't really thought about where I fit in, but I could see everyone else. And I just think it was an eye-opener.
Right. Well, and it's a tool that you'll probably use moving forward in your everyday career and, how you make decisions based on, places that you work, people that you connect with.
Exactly. Experiences you've had, all of that. Yeah.
Very cool. Will you come back again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Madeline Warburton. I originally grew up in Ontario. I then spent many years in Montreal where I studied nutrition and I became a nutritionist, but I also did a minor in ecological agriculture. And I was heavily involved at the university during my bachelor's degree, sort of with the agriculture initiatives on campus at that time. I had a really good friend, a shout out to Valérie Tupin-Dubé, who started a farm-to-school agriculture program at the university at the time. And we also did a fully functioning market vegetable stand that was done by university students. So that's where my interest in agriculture came from, but my background, of course, is more in nutrition. And I became a nutritionist, and then I decided that working in a hospital through a global pandemic was not for me, and that even once the pandemic was over, I wasn't going to be able to continue working in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
So I went back to grad school in food science, and I just completed my master's degree and went into my PhD. So I'm now working on developing a mouth-dissolving film, a little square, kind of like a postage stamp, that will be a vitamin supplement, and it's made from faba beans.
That's incredible. That is very... We could talk for hours on this. We only got 4 minutes. Okay, so going into the agriculture space from nutrition space, Did you have any connection to agriculture before you made that leap, or this was just an avenue that you found interest in after post-secondary?
Yeah, I started studying French and I worked at a Jugo Juice. So that kind of got me thinking about what is nutrition and like what does food mean to us. And I just wanted to know more about healthy living and eating well. And so that's what got me studying nutrition. And then from there, I was just exposed to agriculture at the campus I was at.
Very cool.
And so no background in agriculture or nutrition, nothing like that.
Very cool. So tell us what you can preliminary about the product that you're developing.
Essentially, my master's degree, I already worked with the material I'm working with. It was originally designed as a biodegradable packaging material, but it's edible. And so my specialty was kind of making this material out of faba beans and incorporating oil into it to make it a little more flexible and stretchy. And so, unfortunately, as you can imagine, faba beans absorb moisture. We know that, if you got them dry, you have to rehydrate them. They absorb a great deal of moisture. So the material, I was testing it on meat as an antibacterial packaging, kind of. I added oregano essential oil to it. And it was very successful in terms of the bacteria, but it absorbed some moisture from the meat. So that's where I know that with its ability to absorb moisture, I'm pretty sure it can be successful in this new application I'm moving towards. But my whole project is going to be looking at like how to best distribute the vitamin, because I'm going to look at using vitamin D, which is a fat-soluble vitamin, how to most optimally distribute it in the material so that it can be properly released in the mouth, and maybe also looking at adding some flavoring and sweetener agents. So I'm still in the planning process. So it remains to be seen how much of a success it will be, but I think it can probably work.
Yeah.
So
now that I know you and have met you here, I cannot wait to follow this story. It's very interesting to me.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Have you been to an Advancing Women conference before?
No, this is my first time here.
Your first time. So we've only been here for about 2 hours. So what's your favorite thing so far?
Oh, my favorite thing is that there's no men here.
You are talking to the right podcaster.
My favorite thing, obviously nothing against men, but I think we ladies we can be powerful and successful, and being at a conference like this where we're with all women, I think it's really kind of empowering because it helps us to feel more confident in these kinds of settings. So that's my favorite part.
I love that. That's going to be the tagline for this whole episode. The men aren't here. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Maureen Geddes. I'm from Chatham, Kent, Ontario. My connection to agriculture goes back to childhood, spending summers on the family farm in the Saskatchewan Prairie, a few weeks every summer, that is, and also working on fruit and veg farms, growing up in the area all the way through to high school. And I've taught at the University of Guelph at the Ridgetown campus, so worked with a lot of Aggies for a number of years, and I've had many agricultural clients. So I work right now with Farm Lending Canada, do their HR work for them and a lot of recruiting. I work with Tugonic Enterprises, which is a farm on a First Nation here in southwestern Ontario. And I just love all things food, and especially whole, healthy food.
Yeah, absolutely. You have many hats that you have worn and still do wear in the agriculture industry. Yeah. What do you think is the most rewarding part about being a woman in agriculture?
The connection to people and land. I find it's just feels very real. You can be a full human, and around anybody in ag, it feels like a very at home and earthy place for me. And also it's got everything to offer. All the technology changes are coming fast and furious, and there's just so many opportunities to get not just more efficient and more productive, but also to do better, to be with more regenerative agriculture, to take better care of the land, with having to feed more people. It's a critical step going forward, I think. Yeah. So just what's rewarding to me is to have all of that in one place, to have what feels, ethical, moral, engaged, productive, and a community, really good sense of community in ag. Yeah.
Community is my favorite part.
That's the big part.
Right.
If I had to pick just one, it would be community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Is this your first time at the Advancing Women Agriculture Conference?
It is. And I actually spent about 20 years of my career going back and forth across mostly Canada and other countries, teaching gender in workplaces and diversity and inclusion issues and changing demographics of the workforce. So I'm not new to it, but it's been going for a few years in this sector, and it's the first time I got here. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think so far?
I love it. Yeah. What I'm excited about is you've got the different workshops and that are timely and relevant, and people are engaged on subject, and people are adding to it with their own, like, what are we doing about this? And I think we're in very challenging times when we look at, the environmental issues, the financial issues, the succession planning to transition to keep family farms in the family. From every direction, there's so much happening, and the global changes, especially with our neighbor to the south, and so much unpredictability that can come from any direction. And I'm really encouraged by people coming together from all different parts of the industry and really asking each other questions and getting to know each other. And I think that is a really healthy step. Right. So it's more the collective of us being together and socializing and learning different perspectives and meeting people, even within agriculture, that we wouldn't otherwise meet.
Yeah, I think at any conference, right? True. Of any coming to a conference, it's meeting people within your industry that maybe don't do things the same way as you or think the same way as you, but coming together collaboratively and building that community of strong, resilient women. It gets me fired up.
Yeah, I love it. And I love listening to the passion for the next generation. I was at Ag and Classroom this morning and talking about what we need to do, and a few of us just stepping up with, okay, we can do that, and ideas to take home and to put into place right away.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, action, bias for action, get her done, right?
Get her done. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
My name is Rimsha. I'm here from PEI, Charlottetown. So Prince Edward Island is the smallest province in Canada, and our biggest crop over there is potato. And most of the potato to Canada, we are, like Prince Edward Island is, exporting all the potato to Canadian and some of it to US. Basically, I came to Prince Edward Island for my master's. I'm actually a soil scientist. I did my undergrad in soil sciences, and then I wanted to study environmental sciences with the perspective of agriculture. So I started my master's at University of Prince Edward Island. But then once I was involved with my research there, and I used to go to different farms for my research trials, when I came to Prince Edward Island, it was not my plan to stay there. I was thinking to go back to my country because I'm originally from Pakistan. But then when I was involved with agriculture there, and I used to go to farms for my data collection, and I see how the agriculture works here, farmers are really nice to work with, and also they are not that rigid. If you are telling them this is a sustainable option and this is a good option for your agriculture and the soil, they would be happy to take a chance and they would happy to listen to you. So that was very interesting for me because I had that experience in my back home with my farmers. They would not adopt the sustainable option or environmental option into their traditional practices very quickly. So I really enjoyed working with them, and I liked my master's there, doing my master's there. So I stayed there, and I got a job from the university as a research assistant. So then I realized that if I want to work with farmers more, it should not be a research or academia. It should be something where I can be to their firms. I can connect with them directly on a real time, like not just the research, but the real issues they are having where they need help. So then I joined PEI Federation of Agriculture. So right now I'm working with PEI Federation of Agriculture as a climate action specialist. I am running the federal program on-farm called On-Farm Climate Action Fund there for the Prince Edward Island. So basically I am providing funding to the farmers and helping them for their knowledge transfer, building capacity, resilience, and like to choose and adopt sustainable options for their agriculture businesses. My office, my colleagues gave me this idea that if you want to pursue your studies and want to go for the PhD, that would be a good idea. So with my job right now, I'm also doing part-time PhD. That's with federal government and Dalhousie University. So that's also in the soil science.
What was it about soil science that was interesting to you? Why did you want to start researching that? Why was that your field of study?
Yeah, soil science is a very, very broad subject. But if I talk about to a specific thing which I'm into, if you talk about agriculture, soil is the base, right? So everything comes from soil. It's if your soil health is good, your crop would be good. If soil is fertile, your crop productivity would be good. You are making more money out of it. You are making more cash. So if I'm focusing on soil, it would cover many other things or many other issues in the agriculture and also in the environment, because in the world, agricultural soils are the main source where they can sequester more carbon from the environment, and if we can manage them, they would combat with the global warming and all that stuff. So that's why I chose to do environmental sciences, my master's in environmental sciences, to relate my soil science with environmental sciences.
Yeah, it all ties together, and like you've said, soil is where it starts for every piece of agriculture. Have you been to the Advancing Women in Agriculture conference before?
No, actually, I never been here before. This is my first time, and this is the provincial Department of Agriculture, provincial government in our province. They usually ask for the nominations from the whole province, so they would award few women, 2 from within the provincial department and 2 outside the government, and they would send them to this conference to empower them and to give them that experience. So I'm really honored and happy and thankful to them that they out of all the nominations from the province, they selected me to send here. Looking at my work and what I'm doing for the agriculture sector there, I think I would recommend this conference to all other agricultural women too, because this is a really one of the best conference where everybody, especially the women who are working in agriculture sector, should have at least once. Yeah,
that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name's Sharon Wright. I came here from Newfoundland, and so my connection to agriculture actually starts in Ontario. So I was raised on a farm in southwestern Ontario. I went to Guelph, got my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, and then I've worked in the agriculture industry ever since. I was first in feed business, selling feed in Ontario. And then 20 years ago, we moved to Newfoundland, and I was fortunate to get a job with the government there in the agriculture division. I was there for, 11 years. And then just a little while before I left there, my husband and I bought a farm in Pasadena, Newfoundland. So it was an existing farm. So we were fortunate enough to be able to buy that, and we still have that, so we're 10 years in now on that. And 5 years ago, I took a position at our local college, started an agriculture technician diploma program. Okay. And so I was hired to do course development and instruct, and I'm still instructing there now. So
that's amazing. You are a lifelong learner in the agriculture business.
I am, yeah. Yes, and connected for my entire life now.
Your entire life. So tell us about the home farm. Where did it all start for you?
So the home farm, the farm I grew up in, is a little place called Thorndale, so just outside of London, Ontario. It was your typical mixed farm of the 70s and 80s. We had a small dairy herd and a small bunch of pigs, and every summer we raised some chickens and enough, 150 acres, so enough land to grow feed for those animals, basically. Yeah. My older brother actually kind of moved into more of the whole, sort of I'm going to take over the farm when the time comes sort of situation. And to be perfectly honest, I wasn't sure that I wanted to be certainly a dairy farmer, because I always thought, growing up, well, you know, we're kind of tied down and everything. But anyways, when I finished high school, I, like many people, thought I wanted to be a vet. So I went to Guelph, and then I started in agriculture, and it didn't take too long before I said, no, this is where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in agriculture. So I got have a major in animal science and minor in ag business, and got my degree. So.
From your time on the family farm to the transitions that you've made provincially, as well as different positions that you've had, what are the changes that you've seen for women in general in agriculture?
So when I first started out, when I graduated from university, which would have been in 1990, I started selling feed, and it was a tough go. You know, it was a really tough go. And you know, when I hear people talk now, and especially you know, when women start talking and they say, well, you know, the salesman comes and they're looking for my husband and that kind of thing. And I thought about that the other day. I thought, well, at the time that I was selling feed, the husband was the only one making the decisions. There was no female farmers for me to even call on.
Right.
I didn't usually see the wife or anything, unless it was maybe she was just helping out in the barn for a little bit. But most of them, which is probably still the case, a lot of them are working off farm, or, you know, they would just come in milking time or whatever, or they would say to me, I don't make any of the decisions, you have to talk to him.
Right.
And so now it seems like, you know, we have more women who are the farmers and the decision makers, and now we're running into that where, you know, somebody comes on the farm and says, you know, I want to talk to the farmer, your husband, whatever. On our farm in particular, I find that the salespeople that call on us, they'll talk to me the same as they'll talk to my husband. Like, they don't come in specifically asking for him. I think that's a bit of a change. Like, for us, one of the big transitions that we made, and this is a personal transition, is that I came from a farm that was mostly livestock. And my husband actually grew up he didn't grow up on a farm, but his uncles had farms, and that's where he worked. And it was dairy. And the farm that we bought is fruit and vegetable.
Okay. So, it's a big change.
That was a big transition for us. There's a big learning curve there. So we had a lot to learn, and made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, but we had a lot to learn. So that was a big transition for us too.
Yeah. I think, you know, you had mentioned back when you were selling feed that it was just kind of the norm that you would be looking for the husband.
Yep.
And I feel like through what I've seen, and even being places like Advancing Women, the confidence that women have in our industry now is such an improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And being here and taking that time to invest in yourself and to invest in these opportunities, I leave here feeling inspired. I leave here feeling inspired hearing your story of, you know, you've been through different parts of this industry, and you've been through completely different changes from what you've been growing on your operation, right? Like, that takes a lot of risk. Thank you for sharing your story with me.
No problem.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
Okay, so my name is Taylar Austin. I'm from Pictou County, Nova Scotia, and my connection to agriculture, it's kind of come through my education. My family has a small hobby farm, but I really got into agriculture through attending Dalhousie's Faculty of Agriculture and just through my courses that I've been taking.
Very cool. What drove you to want to go to school for agriculture?
So I originally wanted to go to vet school. I've kind of changed my mind since then, but yeah, taking the courses has really gotten me interested in agriculture itself. I didn't have a lot of background in it beforehand, so the education piece is really what has gotten me into it.
Cool. As a person who used to work in post-secondary education myself, I would hate when people would say to people like college or university students, what do you want to do when you're done? But I'm going to do that to you. What do you want to do when you're done?
So, well, I'm in my 4th year of my degree, so after this, I'm planning to go and do my master's. I'm actually going to do it in soil sciences, which is a bit more agriculture than my degree is. And then I'd like to stay in it after I don't know exactly what yet. But yeah,
But
I
soil
am really
science.
interested in, the link with agriculture and sustainability.
Very cool. What is it about soil science that you're interested in?
The soil microbes, I definitely have an interest in that just because they're so linked to everything with soil health, plant growth, and then that ultimately impacts animals and things like that as well. So that has been my main draw to the soil science section. Yeah.
Very cool. Is this your first time at the Advancing Women's Conference?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
How do you like it so far?
I love it. It's a great opportunity to network. I've met so many people so far. I've added a lot of people on LinkedIn as well, which has been really good. But yeah, it's been amazing.
Very cool. What have you learned so far?
Well, through the talks, a lot to do with just being confident in yourself and just how to advance yourself as a woman in agriculture, just because it primarily is dominated by men in certain industries especially. But yeah, just how to be confident is a big takeaway.
Right. And honestly, that is the biggest piece. I'm a life fan of this conference at this point. The confidence that I see women walk out of here with is super inspiring. And just to hear your story of, not really growing up in agriculture and finding your place here and finding something unique about it that really interests you is always my favorite. So Nova Scotia agriculture. Tell me about it. What's your favorite part about Nova Scotia agriculture?
It's hard to say, where I don't have as much of a background with the production side of agriculture. I mean, I've definitely met a lot of students at the Faculty of Agriculture that come from farming backgrounds, and a lot of it is the people that I really enjoy, just because everyone is so welcoming and nice, and they're open to conversations all about their farms and things like that, which is, it helps you learn as well. So.
Yeah. Farmers love talking about soil. They really do. My husband is one of them. I'm a farmer that doesn't necessarily love talking about soil, but I can appreciate the people who geek out over it. So we thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Taylar.
No problem. Thank you.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your connection to agriculture is.
My name's Terri Lynn Robbins, and I am co-owner of Robbins Family Farm in Deer Lake, Newfoundland.
What is on your farm?
So we are a mixed commodity farm with a strong focus on agritourism and agriculture education for youth. Our primary goal is to educate people about where their food comes from.
Very cool.
So we're a little bit different than your typical petting farm. Let's say everybody that comes to our farm gets a guided tour where we can talk about all the animals on our farm and all the animals that are used for food in our province. And we talk about the dairy industry and the egg industry and the chicken industry. And food is top of mind for everybody in Newfoundland because we are not food secure in our province.
Right. When did the education and agritourism piece come onto the farm?
So I did not grow up in agriculture.
Okay.
It was the furthest thing from my life. I am a city girl, was raised in Brampton, Ontario. And in my previous life, I worked in long-term care. And we moved to Newfoundland after our youngest daughter passed away. And that was 14 years ago, and we just wanted a new chapter in our life. 14 years ago, I didn't even like to get dirty. And now on any given day, I have poop on me. So life has definitely challenged us. When we first bought our property, it was a wholesale greenhouse operation, which only grew flowers. And the first couple of years, I grew flowers. It was okay. I wasn't overly interested. And then I was at an expo one day selling flowers, and a little girl came over and she was so excited about the fact that she just learned at 7 years old that carrots grew in the ground and had green tops and that they weren't, 2 inches long from the grocery store. And I realized that, I don't think I ever gave any thought to where my food came from. Mm-hmm. And so I started volunteering with agriculture in the classroom and as a little Green Thumbs mentor. And I was shocked how many children didn't know where their food came from. But the children didn't know because the parents really didn't have any connection to where their food came from either. So I just started little programs at the farm camp. We're going into our 9th year of farm camp, and garden clubs for kids and toddler programs. So our youngest participant at our farm is just over a year old.
Right.
And, they can't come without parents. And so the education starts with the children, and it trickles back to the parents. And that's when it started.
Yeah. Very, very cool. What do you think is the most rewarding part about being a woman in agriculture for you?
For me personally, it's just about knowing on my own personal journey that I can do hard things. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Right. And that's big. That is.
It is.
It is.
Emotional. I apologize.
I have that effect on people. Yeah. I also get emotional when people get emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to know, obviously, furthest thing from a farm, right? Not knowing. I had the same experience. And I got here and it was scary and
Absolutely.
trying these new things and being confident in what you're doing. But hearing the stories of kids figuring out where their food comes from it's amazing. Gives me goosebumps.
It's amazing to watch the kids just get excited. One of our participants in our toddler program, we call it Toddler Camp. We had a mom come this year, and last year during one of our sessions, he planted a pepper plant. No big deal to most people. But a year later, he still had that pepper plant. He's 4, and they harvested 5 peppers from it. Wow. And she said every time he watered it, every time they harvested a pepper from this plant, he spoke about the farm and his favorite animal and what he likes to eat. And he told people about his pepper plant. And maybe that child is going to be a farmer someday. And if he isn't, then maybe he's just going to talk about where his food came from.
Right.
Either way, it's a win.
Absolutely.
And so for me, that truly is the whole point. The whole point is just to get people excited about knowing where their food comes from.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Rural Woman Podcast. The Rural Woman Podcast is more than just a podcast. We are a community. A huge thank you to the Rural Woman Podcast team, audio editor Max Hofer. A special thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Sarah Riedner from Happiness by the Acre and Carrie Munven from Laystone Farms. To learn how you can become a Patreon executive producer or other ways to financially support the show, head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast to get the latest episodes directly on your playlist. And if you are loving the show, please be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other platform that accepts ratings and reviews. You can connect with us on social media at The Rural Woman Podcast and with me at Wild Rose Farmer. One of the best ways you can support the show is by sharing it. Send this episode to a friend or share on your social media. Let's strengthen and amplify the voices of women in agriculture together. Until next time, my friend, keep sharing your story. Did you know that you can get this same great episode of the Rural Woman Podcast ad-free? I get it. Listening to ads during a podcast isn't always my favorite either. But in order to keep the lights and coffee pot on here at the Rural Woman Podcast Studios, they are necessary. I am so grateful to each and every one of my sponsors, but if you yourself would like to skip the ads while supporting the show, consider joining me over on Patreon. Patrons of the Rural Woman Podcast get ad-free episodes starting at Tier 5 on their podcast player of choice each week, plus some other great benefits. Find out more by heading to the link in today's show notes to learn how you can become a patron through Patreon.